is Tall Can Audio.
Here it is!
So there you have it. I guess we are sticking around a little bit longer. Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett will head back to the locker room, take off their heavily soiled diapers after that little tantrum at the end of the game, and jump on a plane. The Leafs take this one 2-1, are on the board in the series, down 3-1, but taking it home for Game 5 in Toronto in a performance that honestly they were pretty full value for. If you follow me on Twitter, if you've been interacting with us there, you saw me in the first period say, and I stand by this honestly, that they didn't look desperate at all. Like, they were playing fine, it was going okay, but this did not look like a team that felt like, oh my God, we better have the performance of a lifetime here. They just sort of were going back and forth with Florida and not a whole lot of urgency there. And that was alarming to me, but only in the sense that it was confirming what I think a lot of people had already decided after Game 3, which was, fuck it, we're done. These guys don't care, and we're out of here. Now, to be fair, all of the guys in the Big Four stepped up throughout the game and made different plays at different moments. All of them, like I got Kevin Papetti's tweet here. He does a nice job covering the analytics around the Leafs if you're interested in following him. He talks about here in terms of expected goals for. So just your standard XGF. William Nylander at 83%. That is elite. Auston Matthews at 74%. Mitch Marner at 69%. And John Tavares at 63%. So all way, way, way above average. But as I said, it just didn't look like in the first period that was going to be the case the way they were coming out. But they got it going and put in a nice performance. Mitch Marner gets a goal. William Nylander gets a goal. Willie, quite frankly, in this game was a man possessed. Did all the things in the defensive zone that you want to see him do. Like I said, I know he scored, and that was a little bit of a lucky one. Kind of took a crazy bounce, and you'll take it, and Willie makes the play to finish it off. But in terms of, earned, I don't know. But I said it in the last round, right? Who cares about earned? In Game 2, the Leafs hit 4 or 5 posts and crossbars, and none of those went for you. So finally, you get a bit of a bounce, right? Whether you love the Leafs or hate the Leafs, this one was just one of those bounces that goes your way, and they haven't had a lot of those in this series. So kudos to Willie for that one. And then Mitchie stays with it in the third period, scores a nice goal with guys in front of the net. O'Reilly making his presence felt right in front. Marner again. In the last minute of play, he's out there with Achari and with O'Reilly. They're trusting him to protect this 1-goal lead, and he did it. It was fair value for it, right? Again, in the first, he was I wouldn't say most of the rest of the team looked nervous. I just think they didn't look very good, right, to start the game. Mitch, he still looked like, right? Like, there was a couple of iffy plays there early on, and you sort of felt like, we're going to see a little bit more of what we saw in Game 3 out of this guy. And to his credit, he turned it around. Bunch of hits. I think he had 4 hits in the game, 3 shots on goal. Like I said, a goal. And yeah, like 69% XGF, which is pretty elite for himself there too. So, they live to fight another day. And if I'm being honest with you, I came into this game just whatever, right? Those of you who heard the post-game show I posted after Game 3, which was only 53 seconds long, there was nothing to say. None of the top guys showed up, and once you're down 3-0, you are almost certainly toast, right? We're talking about 100 years of National Hockey League playoffs, and teams have only come back, 4 or 5 times? So there's a reason that this doesn't get done. And so coming into this game, my feelings were sort of like, just go away. Like, I don't even want to be bothered with this, because whether it happens tonight in 4 games or 5 or 6, in all likelihood, like in the overwhelming likelihood, you're going down. And so based on what they had shown me in Game 3, I was ready for that to just happen. Like, just go, right? We're obviously going to be blowing this thing up, and there's going to be moves and management and coaches and players. This whole thing's going to look different. So just get to it, right? Like, don't drag this out any longer. To their credit, it wasn't a blowout, right? It's not like they exploded for huge offensive numbers, but all 4 of those guys showed up for Game 4. And I can only give them so much credit for that because that's the performance that it's supposed to take from your stars in the playoffs to keep moving on. You don't give them credit for showing up and being as good as they are. You notice when they show up and are invisible. So it's hard to give them credit because you're still down 3-1 now. And you got to win 3 in a row now as opposed to winning 4 in a row from here. So, yeah, it's a little less daunting now than it was, but it's still 3-1. And in all likelihood, this still doesn't get done. But you have planted a seed of doubt now. You are dragging Florida back to Toronto with you to play another one on Friday. And that's where the pressure points would start to turn, right? Is if you can win one at home and you go back to Florida and now they're starting to feel it a little bit back on home ice, knowing that there's a game 7 waiting if they don't get it done there, and that's where anything can happen. All the things that we talked about last round against Tampa, that Toronto badly wanted to get that done in game 6 down there and not tempt fate with game 7 when they had a 3-1 lead. Well, for now, that's where Florida could be if they don't win in game 5 on Friday night in Toronto. So you've planted a seed of doubt. Joseph Woll, man, interesting guy to watch, eh? Like, I think he's 10-2-0 now, 10-2-1 in his NHL career. Had a very good AHL year before getting called up as well. 2 years ago, you'd have called that guy a lost cause. He'd had some injuries, it just wasn't really working out, and the Leafs have had a bunch of these cases when it comes to young goalies. You're just like, fuck, like they just sort of fall apart and you never hear from them again. And that's sort of where Joe Woll was 2 years ago. And then last year, he comes back and he has a pretty good year. He's fine. He had a little injury again. But you're kind of like, all right, well, let's see where he goes. But he's turning 24. Like, he's starting to get up there a little bit. Goalies take a little longer, but you weren't ready to bank on him yet. And then this year, he's elite in the AHL. I think he was undefeated when they called him up. What was he, like 8-0-0 or something like that? And, he plays a bunch of games for the Leafs. He's incredible there as well. And so when you're watching him, he looks remarkably calm. Right, like one of the things that's different about him than a lot of goalies is just how still he is in the net, right? His movements are smaller. He's not herky-jerky and all over the place. He's not leaping all over the place. He's just kind of there where he's supposed to be, and he doesn't look rattled. And he doesn't look spectacular, but it's because he doesn't have to be spectacular. So I don't know at this point how good Joseph Woll is going to be in the NHL. But right now, while you're trying to do this, as long as he's playing well, that's got to be reassuring to your guys, right? That he doesn't look rattled. He's not falling all over the place. He's just kind of back there doing his thing. And he makes you feel like, okay, things are under control, right? Things aren't on fire in our own end. He just kind of grabs it, squeezes it to the body, and we'll get a whistle here. I like that right now. While you're trying to climb out of this hole. I don't know how long it lasts. He's fairly unproven at this level still. But right now, it would be hard. Like, we don't know what Samsonov's condition is. If he's ready to go on Friday, are you going back to him? And you wonder, because he was already dealing with something, right? When he was getting up, people were commenting all the time on him looking sore and a little slow getting up sometimes. So he had that, and now he has this injury after the collision with Shen. Are you going back to him, or do you just kind of stick with Joseph Woll right now? And I know as fans, it's very easy for us to go, man, you ride the guy who just got us the win. And I think that's what they'll do. And look, we have no idea whether Samsonov's going to be ready or not. But I think that's what they'll do, but it's not that simple in the locker room, right? We talk about the injuries that Samsonov has clearly been playing through. He's done that for you, right? He's battled for you. He stayed in there when you badly needed him because you thought you had nobody else, right? Murray's been gone and you don't even know how much you trust him when he's back. The guys appreciate that. Like, your teammates respect that and the coaches respect that. And so if he's good to go, it's not as easy in the locker room to look at him and go, yeah, you sit there. We're going with Joseph Woll, as it is for fans to do it. And I think at the end of the day, that's what they'll do because they got the win here. They know Woll is fresh and, not nearly as beat up as Samsonov. And, you've got a long road ahead of you here if you have any dreams at all of getting out of this. But it won't be easy. I do think, though, at this point, your life is on the line. You just have to make the best decision you can. But that will be uncomfortable in the locker room. Make no mistake about that. I do want to mention one other thing about Sheldon Keefe maybe before we wind this one down, and that is that he continues to panic, I think, at times. Like we saw all new lines and D pairings again. I think the D worked pretty well, but I think he has a tendency to show you when he's rattled. And I've mentioned this before. If you go back even as far as the bubble, right, in 2020 against Columbus, and you are up against it, you're down and out, and you decide you're going to load up. They were calling it the super line or something. It was Matthews, Marner, and Tavares. They hadn't done it at all during the season. We hadn't seen it once. But, hey, our back's against the wall. We're going to do this. And that pushes Willie into the middle. He hadn't played there all year. And it just throws everything out of whack. And you do it at the last minute. And it to me, it says to your players, holy shit, we're in trouble. Like, we better do something crazy. Instead of just trusting the process, trusting the things that have gotten you there. And we see that pretty often in the playoffs, right? Like, if things aren't going well, it's not just lines in a blender. It's everything, right? And it says to your guys, holy shit, here we go again, right? Like, we got to change everything. Nothing we're doing is working. Well, you were a 110-point team or whatever they were this year. Something you do is correct. And so I do wonder about what impact that has mentally on your team and just on chemistry of your guys who are constantly being shuffled around all over the place. I do think the D pairings worked better tonight. Seeing McCabe with Liljegren, we've talked a little on here about McCabe and Brody, that pairing has struggled a bit in this series after being fantastic in the Tampa series, but it doesn't really have a puck transporter, right? They're both very good defensively, both good in their own end, although McCabe, again, has struggled at times in this series, like I said. But it doesn't have the guy who's going to rush it out, right? They're both competent skating with the puck, but they're supposed to be the responsible guy, and there's supposed to be someone who can skate over on the other side. So when you do it this way, you go with 7 defense again, but it has Brody with Hall a lot of the time, and then McCabe with Liljegren, and then you have Giordano there as well to, slot into defensive zone faceoffs, penalty kill, things like that. Justin Hall is a little bit better at carrying the puck out. I know not fantastic all the time. Liljegren definitely better. So it helps those guys out. It doesn't give you that one shutdown pair you're looking for, but it wasn't really shutting anyone down anyway in this series. So maybe you just move away from it, try to take a slightly different approach. And I thought this was a nice game for Liljegren, right? He struggled a little early on, I thought, maybe looked a little bit nervous, but got his feet underneath him, contributed on that second goal for Toronto, made a nice play late in the third period, basically just out-battling Matthew Tkachuk, which is no easy task right there beside the net. So nice game for him. And so I think the pairings work. But again, to go back to Keefe, after Florida scores to make it 2-1, he calls the timeout. And I said on Twitter at Tall Can Audio, if you want to follow us there, sometimes when you call a timeout to settle things down or to calm things down, all you're doing is reminding your players or reinforcing to your players that there's a reason not to be calm right now. They were playing really well at that point, and you give up a goal against. You knew it was coming. Like, Florida's a good team. Like, they're going to score as well. Maybe you didn't need to do that, right? Like, maybe you're telling the guys, okay, everybody settle down, and you're kind of like, we're good, coach. Like, you're the only one kind of rattled back there. Now, the counter argument is pretty obvious. If he doesn't call the timeout and Florida does end up coming right back down and scoring, someone's going to say you should have called a timeout. And I get that. But the Leafs were playing really well in the third period. They didn't look rattled. It's not like they'd given up 2 or 3 and had a bunch of glorious chances against. I didn't think the timeout was necessary. And like I said, sometimes when you do that, you give your guys time to stop playing and they stand around and go, holy shit, we're in this situation again. Here it comes. And that can be just as dangerous. So there's little things Keefe is doing in these playoffs that I haven't loved, right? And so, that's going to be something that gets addressed when this series does end one way or another. I'm pretty sure Keefe ain't coming back. I think you can make a pretty compelling argument that he's been outcoached in both series, and his moves are too erratic for a team that appears to need calm and stability, right? I don't like all the juggling and the shuffling and all these sorts of things. So just something to keep an eye on as we move forward for Game 5 on Friday night in Toronto. You've taken the first step. We'll see what's going to happen next. I think that's it for this one. They showed a little something tonight to stay alive. We'll see if they can ramp it up because, honestly, at times it sort of also looked like Florida might have been sleeping through this one a little bit too. So hard to match urgency, right? One team's back is against the wall and their season's on the line. The other team knows they got a couple cracks at this. So I think at times Florida didn't necessarily have the urgency that they needed in this one until the muggings that they tried to commit at the 60-minute mark. So that'll be it. Thank you so much for listening. My name's Matt Robinson. We'll see you Friday night.